students. Today we are going to discuss about psychoanalysis and feminism. Juliet Mitchell, the British feminist of 20th century, she is trying to bring relationship between psychoanalysis and feminism in this particular essay, and she is trying to emphasize that feminism has much to do with psychoanalysis than any other human knowledge or branch of human knowledge. So, her essay, Psychoanalysis and Feminism, deals with sexual constructs, political constructs, and socio-cultural construct in gender identity. And in the essay, first of all, she is giving the records of different psychoanalytical school of thought. She is telling that independent object relations, Kleinian object relations, and Ana-Freudian, these three branches of psychoanalysis, she is dealing with when she was trained as a psych, as a psychoanalyst in London Institute of Psychoanalysis. And she is telling that Freud means Sigmund Freud and Anna Freud. Anna Freud was the daughter of Sigmund Freud. Freud and Anna Freud's theories are known as one person psychologies. It is one person psychology. That means it deals with drives, intuitions, etc. And object relations psychology, particularly of the British school, is a so called two person psychology. And this two person psychology means she is trying to bring out the desires and other things. So she is telling the first, that means the Freud and Anna Freud's one person psychology emphasizes the drives, desires, and fantasies of the subject. Whereas the two person psychology stresses the unconscious interaction with a crucial other person. And who is this crucial other person? This person is the object of that unconscious interaction. And she is telling that all three branches of training were powerfully dismissive of Lacan, whose return to Freud has so impressed me. So, Lacanian concept of treating with the human desire and conscious and unconscious, that has been dismissed by all these three branches: independent object relation, Kleinian object relation, and Ana-Freudian. Then she is telling that why firstly did psychoanalysis have such a renaissance within feminism? That when feminism in its different waves, feminism came in different waves. The first wave of feminism was radical feminism. The second one was stressed was on equality, and the third one was metaphysical, and the fourth one was modernism. And now we are entering into the balanced feminism or equilibrium feminism. So she is telling that the second phase of feminism, that is the feminism based on demand for equality, they have given precedence to psychoanalysis. And then her second question was, why did the relationship between these develop the way it did, that is largely away from an interest such as mine in understanding the construction of sexual difference within ideology? So first thing is that why feminism is using psychoanalysis in such a manner, such an involved manner. And the second thing is that how to comprehend the constructs within the psychoanalysis about feminism. And she is trying to explain that gradually by telling that it is true that women may be socialized into assuming the position of the second sex. This conscious, deliberate socialization is inadequate to explain the structure of sexual difference. So she is telling that women in general, they have been using their consciousness as a second sex. In their own consciousness, they have accepted their domination by the patriarchy somewhere, and this is working in bringing out their ideas and ideologies. And she is elaborating that beyond the biophysical, chemical, anatomical, constitutional factors and the social learning behaviors of sexual difference, we live ourselves as subjects which are sexually differentiated, or in today's idiom, gendered. She is telling that there are biophysical, chemical, anatomical, constitutional difference between men and women. But besides that also, and besides the social learning and behavior which is imposed on women, there is also women are living as subjects which are sexually differenced or gendered. Women behave by themselves in a gendered manner in every matter. When some work, when some thought, when some idea comes before them, they immediately take it in a gendered manner. So she is telling, she is bringing another Marxist structuralist, post structuralist, Louis Althusser, and his idea of ideology, that it is the equivalent to how we live ourselves as subjects, both in general and in our own particular social world. Althusser had said that what is ideology? Ideology means it is how we live ourselves, what is our own consciousness about ourselves, and all those subjects related to it, dealing with our own particular social world. That means women have created their own ideologies. That is the argument of Mitchell. And she is going further to discuss this ideology of women, or the gendered ideology of women. She is telling feminism seems always to be rowing against a current that is ultimately the stronger force. There is an inherent conservatism at work in the psycho ideological living of sexual relations that any feminist progression ultimately encounters. So she is telling that with the advent of feminism, when feminism came in its first phase, radical feminism demanding the dismantling of patriarchal structure. So then also feminism was in a current, knowing very well that they were fighting against a very stronger force, that is the age old patriarchy, which is well trenched. It is not easy to dismantle patriarchy. And there is an inherent conservatism at work in the psycho ideological living. And why the patriarchy is strong? It is not that patriarchy was being imposed or imposing itself for such a long time, but also because of the psycho ideological concept of sexual relationship in our society, or particularly in the mind of the woman. The women have accepted for themselves from generations the psycho ideological life, that they are women, they have to live like this, they have to do this like this. Or at that time, if you think the girl should not ride a bicycle, the girl should not do this, the girl should not climb a tree, etc. So these are psycho ideological. An ideological girl or a woman must look beautiful to man. So these were the ideas which were making the feminist movement very weak in comparison to the entrenched patriarchy. And the crucial point, however, is that conservatism actually seems inherent in very construction of sexual difference, as though difference itself has in its constitution instead insisted on stasis. And she is arguing that the conservatism the conservatism is not a one way expression. The conservatism is popularly associated with patriarchy. But she is arguing from the psychological point of view, conservatism is also associated with the femininity. A woman thinks she is feminine. In those days, a woman cannot be a soldier, a woman cannot be a mountaineer, a woman cannot be an explorer. So that was the conservatism. So, conservatism on both sides. And that conservatism was inherent in the very construction of sexual difference. So, a feminine construct was created within the feminine consciousness. So, that is the feminine construct. And this difference of construct has insisted on stasis. It always wanted that there should be the stasis, there should not be any change. Let it be like that. The woman cannot generally go against the tradition. And what is that tradition? That tradition is the construct, the biological or the gender construct of femininity and masculinity. Then she is telling that there is a drive for change, but also a drive to stay put. So, in the feminine mind or in the feminist movement, there was a binary quality, that was there was a drive for change. They wanted the change, but at the same time, they wanted to stay put. The family is always changing its social economic form and function, yet ideologically it is conceived of as though it were the still center of a moving world. And she is arguing that over the from the ages, the concept of family is changing. As the concept of family was in 19th century, that was not same in 20th century. But what happened? The family still remain as the center of this moving world, as if the family is holding on to that gendered biasness, the gendered balance, the gendered roles, or the gendered construct. Although everyone is partly conservative, it is women in terms both of their socio-economic position in the family and of the psycho-ideological construction that predisposes them to that location. So she is arguing that in 20th century also there were lot of changes in kinship or family models like single parenthood, child free couple, same sex parents. But still then the women in socio-economic position and psycho-ideological construction, they still are conservative. That means, in spite of getting engaged growingly in economic and social activities, the women were coming back to their position of no change. Similarly, with the advent of psychoanalysis and the other ideas and ideologies, the feminist movement remained mostly conservative. That means the feminist movement couldn't make much headway in spite of so many changes in the society. So, feminism is confronted with the task of pursuing emancipation in the heart of darkness. Therefore, Mitchell is telling, if this is the case, if the woman cannot overcome their feminine construct, their unconscious feminine conservatism, then feminist movement is simply moving in the heart of darkness. It will go nowhere. It cannot achieve anything. It is also the result of the generational transmission of a certain kind of thought about concept like masculinity and femininity. So she is telling that it is because of the generational transmission of certain kind of thought about concepts like masculinity and femininity. And what is hindering, what is obstructing the feminist movement from achieving its goal or moving in that direction is the generational transmission of the thought about concept of femininity and masculinity. And she is telling this kind of thought is partly conscious, deliberately chosen and enacted. So this thought is having a mixture of different mindset. What are the different mindset? It is partly conscious, partly conscious. Women are consciously trying to remain where they were. Secondly, deliberately chosen and enacted. They are also deliberately making a choice and enacting their role as a woman, as a feminine entity. As so, Mitchell is further analyzing this unconscious or conscious choice and enaction. She is bringing Freud's reference to a collective mind, and Carl Jung, the 20th century psychoanalyst and student of Freud, who postulates an innate original symbolism. Whereas Freud simply points to the fact that human must have some mental experience in common that are transmitted rather than re-experienced afresh. So Freud said that collective mind means humanity is having some common mental experiences which is transmitted from generation to generation without re-experiencing it afresh. But Jung, on the other hand, is trying to say that it is not like that collective mind, but it is a collective consciousness. Freud said collective mind, Jung said collective consciousness. So, mind is recording the experiences and it is transmitting, and collective consciousness means it is not the experience, but it is a sense within. You can see when It may not be like that at present society, but a few years ago also, if you find when one woman is coming across another woman, immediately they switch to a topic which is particularly woman. So that is the collective consciousness of Carl Jung. So Mitchell is telling that feminist movement is being analyzed from these two aspects, but Carl Jung's analysis is more pertinent to find that why feminist movement is not making any significant progress. So she is explaining that on being made unconscious, ordinary thought process seem to meet up with something that is already there. Within psychoanalysis, explanations for this may vary. So she is telling what is that collective consciousness? That collective consciousness is coming from the ordinary thought procedure and which is meeting up with something which is already there. That means which is there in the unconscious. So she is telling in this way the feminine collective consciousness is making a hindrance to its progress from its position of being suppressed and oppressed. So she is asking what differentiates women not from each other but from men. It was a necessary strategy for forming a political movement. So if feminist movement has to get its political identity, if it will be a political movement, because only the economic movement can take women out of the patriarchy's control, it must have political power to get its proper right. So she is telling it is not therefore without irony a poetic justice that the use of psychoanalysis to further this quest offered the very sword which cut it apart. If we look at the necessary strategy for forming a political movement, she is telling it is also ironical. Why? Because the movement of feminism, it is being controlled by another consciousness, collective consciousness. That collective consciousness is coming from the idea of one mother and begotten by one father theory of humanity. That human theory that there is one father and there is one mother, and from that the offsprings are coming and can be the common one. The mother can differ, therefore the mother has no significance in comparison to the father. Or even if we go back to the biblical theory that Eve was created by God from the rib of Adam, then who is Eve? Eve is definitely a smaller part of Adam. So Adam is more powerful. Therefore, this constitutes the political consciousness in feminist idea, and again that is pulling down the feminist movement from going forward. So she is telling that uh, patriarchy and oppression were interim operational terms being deployed by the then politically active women's liberation movement. Oppression, as the struggles for independence in the then named Third World, was a term used to distinguish the mode of subjugation from exploitation, which in the Marxist sense had a precise meaning. She is telling that feminist movement or women's liberation movement, they were using the word oppression, and there was also another word, exploitation. So she is telling, then which word will be suitable? Oppression never achieved precision as a concept. So oppression cannot be achieving the goal of feminine movement, feminist movement, because women are not oppressed. They are having their own consciousness of being stay put at one place. And if we go for subjugation from exploitation, then who is exploiting whom? The patriarchy is exploiting the woman. But at the same time, she is arguing that women are playing the role of victim or being exploited by their own consciousness, collective consciousness. So she is telling that the new focus entailed a stress on the imbrication of sexuality, language, and textuality. So time has come that feminist movement must look at a new focus which will stress on sexuality, language, and textuality. That the feminist movement, starting with economic parity, coming to political parity, now has to come to the literature or text, because text is the most powerful, narrative is most powerful. If the woman is continuing with that narrative of her own, that I am a woman, I am not compatible with man, I am weak, I should look beautiful, I should not do this, I should not do that. So feminist movement cannot be liberated from its own judgment, which is erroneous. So she is telling that literature is the only place where feminist movement can move forward. If we have to focus on it, we have to change the collective consciousness of woman or femininity. In the process, the unconscious, insofar as it related to the question of ideology and patriarchy, either become absorbed into something else or was dismissed. So, finally, she is telling that psychoanalysis deals above all with symptoms. However, femininity and masculinity are not symptoms, and are they pathologies? So, psychoanalysis only deals with symptom. It cannot give the direction to the feminist movement. But femininity and masculinity, they are not symptoms, nor they are pathologies. Then what they are? They are the consciousness or a powerful unconscious or powerful drive. Therefore, when one comes to practice psychoanalysis, it is almost a shock to reflect on one's work and realize that the question of femininity and masculinity crop up relatively rarely. And psychoanalysis and feminism set out the terms whereby we can use psychoanalysis in the context of kinship rules and relations to understand the construction of sexual difference. So she is telling that if we have to properly understand, properly find out how the sexual construct is being created and what is the difference between the male and the female sexual construct, then we have to take help of psychoanalysis more than the economic or political movement. Literature, and within it, we can bring out the fallaciousness of this gender construct or the elements of gender construct, to dismantle it and to come out of it. So, in this way, Mitchell is trying to bring back psychoanalysis to women's studies or feminist movement and to give it a true direction.